understanding the perpetual nature, utilizing the test and execute approach that you do with an enormous amount of content, and being able to analyze that content to see how you can maximize its exposure through the capture, modify, amplify, and perpetuate strategy. Since 1981, Justin has been producing world-class Bordeaux-style wines from Paso Robles on California's Central Coast. As the pioneer of Paso, Justin wines are what put Paso Robles on the winemaking map. The Justin team believes that wine should be exceptional from every angle, which is why their team uses boutique winemaking practices like hand harvesting and hand sorting. With a rich history of accolades, Justin produces exceptional wines and is proud to be America's #1 luxury Cabernet. Whether you're the first-time wine drinker or a wine aficionado, Justin has a wine for every celebration and occasion. Visit justinwine.com and enter promo code Playbook20 for 20% off your order. Justin offers the perfect holiday gifts for clients, colleagues, friends, or family. Be sure to check them out at justinwine.com to receive 20% off your order for a limited time and use the promo code Playbook20. Welcome back to Office Hours. I'm David Meltzer, and I'm here with my infamous co-hosts, especially Jason Waller, CEO of Power Home Solar, and of course the host of my favorite podcast, world-renowned True Underdog Podcast. Welcome back, my friend. Of course, I have one of my great partners over there, Mike Momola, speaker, author, entrepreneur, partner at Media Abundance, and of course, an incredible influencer of good, and the legend on the end, David Marino, the sports agent, partner at Brown Rudnick, a speaker as well, and an all-around great guy. And we are here to welcome our first guest, Sir Martin Sorrell, founder and executive chairman of S4 Capital. Welcome to Office Hours, Martin.
Hello, David. Hello from London. Hello from London.
It is so nice that we have technology on our side to have you here. And your company, S4 Capital, is one of the largest, if not the largest, advertising and marketing services company in the world. And it takes a while to get there.
We've got to get the history right. So I ran WPP for 33 years, and that was. And now we're building a new company. We started it 3 years ago called S4 Capital, which is a digital advertising, content, data, and digital media specialist. So we'll get the history. And before that, I was at Saatchi's, which also was the largest agency in the world. So we've done it twice, and we're on our way to a third time.
And I'm sure the third time is always easier as you learn the secrets and have the relationships in order to effectuate it. What are some of those secrets that you've learned here coming into the third time of scaling a business? Statistically, when you have a person who has built 2 large companies successfully, the third one's almost, quote unquote, a sure thing. But what are some of those lessons, and what people are you carrying over to assure that success?
Well, if it was a secret, David, if you started to talk about it, particularly on your show or anything else, it wouldn't be a secret any longer. So I won't go into the secrets. But look, no, first
You're like
of all,
Ray Kroc, man. We'll never get the secret sauce.
And I was at the shoulders, I guess, of the Saatchi brothers at Saatchi's, and that was the first time we did that in the 70s and the early 80s, and then in 85, at the age of 40, I started WPP from zero, and it became the largest factor in the industry. The differences between Saatchi was about globalization. If you ever came across a famous business, well, he used to be famous, business school professor called Theodore Levitt at Harvard Business School. He wrote an article in the Harvard Business Review, I think it was in 1983, about globalization. And his theory was, and he over-egged it to make the point, as he admitted before he died, sadly, he over-egged it. He said consumers are going to consume everything in the same way everywhere, and that therefore a global business. You know, when I was at business school, actually, the son of the CEO of Procter and Gamble was in the class. I always remember this. And Procter and Gamble was regarded as being a global company. But at that time in 1966 to 68, only 10% of its sales came from outside the US. So Saatchi's was about globalization. WPP, which we started in 85 and took through till to 2018, was there were two phases there. One was a continuation of globalization. The second was the rise of technology or digital technology from about 1997 onwards. That was when we started to grasp the digital nettle. What S4 is about is purely about growth. Interestingly, Saatchi's and WPP, there was a balance. The metrics for growth and for the analysts and for the shareholders, because all three are listed companies or were listed companies, the metrics for shareholders were, or share owners were evenly balanced, I would say, between revenue growth and margin growth for the first two, for Saatchi's and WPP. With S4, it's really a focus on top line growth, not to the exclusion of margin, but I would say if you're going to weight it, instead of it being 50-50, which it was, I would say 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the weighting would be on top line growth and the balance on margin. So we're totally focused on growth and totally focused on digital. Our mission is to create a new advertising and marketing services model based around the digital economy and to disrupt the old. So there's a disruption, and we're sort of Teslan or Amazonian to some sense, to use grand examples in our own way around our own industry. The addressable market for us is about $1.8 trillion, about 500 billion in media, about 500 billion in marketing services, and about 800 billion in trade budgets, which is what Amazon tends to go after. So there are four principles behind S4. One is purely digital, because that's where the growth is. Digital is over 50% of the market currently, and it will be 70% by 2024 or 5 or 6, depending on whose numbers you believe. Secondly, the model is almost like an election model, that is used in elections. We use data to create content, digital content, and we pump it out through digital media, and then we recalibrate the creative content on the basis of the response. So it's no longer the fixed TV film model. This is a model which is iterative in a 24/7, always-on world. It's a sort of circular model that continues to improve. So, for example, for Netflix, for Narcos 3, we would produce probably 1.6 million in theory, different creative executions. We'll probably use about 50 to 70,000, but we would deploy them, monitor the response, and then redeploy. So that's the second point. We go to the market as faster, better, cheaper. So faster is about agility, because we think that's the key corporate attribute. Better is about understanding the digital ecosystem, and that I just run through. It'll take a bit of a few seconds, but the digital ecosystem is comprised of Google, Facebook, Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba, TikTok, Apple, Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce, IBM, SAP, Twitter, Snap, Pinterest, Spotify, Netflix, LG, Samsung, Epic, Kalshu, which is the competitor to TikTok, Shopify. These are the companies that we look at continuously and try and evaluate for our clients the relative merits. And cheaper means efficiency. I was going to say in a non-inflationary world, but we just had a couple of indices, both sides of the Atlantic, which indicate that inflation for the first time for many years is picking up. But basically, our clients want us to deliver the services we deliver efficiently, because in a close to zero inflation world, they have very little pricing power. And the fourth basic principle is a unitary structure. The structures we had at Saatchi's and WPP were based on ideas that there was a guy called Marion Harper who founded Interpublic Group in the 1950s. And he set up different brands. He had multi-brands, multi-agencies to handle conflicting accounts. That's not a model that is, I think, fit for purpose anymore. So our approach is a unitary approach. We don't, when we merge with companies, we don't, for example, use earn-outs. We merge immediately, half shares, half cash. And and we unify ownership and control. So we have no separation of ownership and control. In most big companies, you have managers who don't have, they may have options, but as Warren Buffett said, that's heads I win, tails you lose. You don't give an institution a 10-year call on your stock at zero cost. So why would you give management that? And I agree with him on that. That really you want management to put their money where their mouth is and unify it. So the unitary structure results in our company has got S4 has a market cap now of over $5 billion after 3 years, and well over half the company is owned by people who live and work in the company. And I think that's extremely important. So those are the basic principles. Mission, to create new model, disrupt the old, purely digital, holy trinity model of data driving content through digital media, faster, better, cheaper, and unitary structure.
This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/playbook today to get a 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/playbook. Imagine starting a small business, your first customer, first hire, first real paycheck. But everything isn't just exciting, it's scary. That's where JustWorks come in, the all-in-one platform that supports small business growth. Access seamless tools that help with benefits, payroll, HR, and compliance with transparent pricing. It's time to make payroll painless. Run payroll in 90 seconds or less and automate payments so you can set it and forget it. Did you know in 2023 alone, they processed over 25.6 billion in trusted payroll customers? Don't worry about the paperwork piling up either. They take care of payroll tax documents and reporting to help you stay compliant. Visit justworks.com/podcast to join the thousands of small businesses that trust JustWorks to take care of payroll, benefits, compliance, and more. That's justworks.com/podcast. Well, without giving us the secrets, I think
And then
you
I'll
gave us.
shut. Then I'll.
Without giving the secrets, I think you gave us the secrets.
Well, look, the market, the digital media market is last year was probably about 550, 600 billion. This year probably call it 600, 650, maybe a little bit more. And of that, well over a half this year will be digital. Google's ad revenues, if you extrapolate the first quarter ad revenues and assume that they'll achieve the same growth rate through the year, which is an important assumption, but I think broadly be true, they will go from 180 billion of ad revenues, roughly, to 240. Facebook will go from 80 billion to 110. And Amazon, it's difficult. They don't give you the precise number. It's under other revenue, but you can sort of figure it out. It's about 25 to 35. That's an incremental 100 billion from the three biggest platforms. You then have the three Chinese platforms, Alibaba and Tencent. It's difficult to get the ad revenues for Alibaba and Tencent, and they're basically Chinese. TikTok or ByteDance, interestingly, came out with a number, I think it was about 29 billion or 32 billion of annual ad revenues. I think in 2019, it was around 9 billion. And as TikTok tried to expand or has tried to expand internationally, obviously its ad revenues have grown. You may remember they hired Kevin Mayer from Disney. Didn't last long, but they hired him to build their international expansion, and that was trumped by President Trump when he put the kibosh on them expanding into the US. but they are the dominant platforms. And you mentioned Twitter and Snap and Pinterest, and don't get me wrong, they are important. But Snap last year had a very successful, Evan Spiegel's very talented, has built a great business, competitive with Instagram. Not so much, to your point about Facebook, Facebook certainly came under some pressure from younger consumers, but Instagram, they switched to Instagram, and Instagram and Snap have traded punches, and Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg have been very adept at simulating or copying some of the features of Snap, and they made it popular. But the point about Snap is it had a successful year last year. What were its ad revenues? $2.5 billion. At its Capital Markets Day, it said it was going to increase its revenues by 50%, I think, a year for 5 years. But even if you extrapolate out $2.5 billion, you're not going to get to anywhere near the platforms that I mentioned. Twitter and Pinterest are even smaller. They're sub 1 billion. So yes, they're important. Yes, they're important vehicles for you spending your $10 or $12 million a month. But the heart of the business, whether you like it or not, is dominated by 3 Western and 3 Eastern platforms. And in my view, will continue to be so. It may be that the regulators will stop them from acquiring, the Amazon MGM deal, small deal for Amazon in the context of their operations. But, they poke the regulatory bear there a little bit by doing that. We'll see what happens, whether that goes through or not. A lot of scrutiny of it. There are a lot of lawsuits, a lot of regulatory pressures being levied against the big platforms. But my view, you're not going to see the dominance of those platforms undercut to a significant degree. Maybe they won't acquire, but they will continue to grow. Very interestingly, Google and Apple this year, I think, are going to buy back about $150 billion of buybacks. And one of the reasons I think of that is obviously they've got surplus cash on their balance sheet, surplus liquidity, but it's also because I think that they will be stymied. Just as I'm talking to you, there's a squib on Facebook seeking recusal of FTC Chair Lina Khan because she's biased on the basis of the writings that she's written before on Facebook. So you're going to see this regulatory tussle that takes place, but I don't think they will get broken up. I think they will stay in situ, in place, and I think they will continue to grow. They are very strong. They are very effective. And one other point, 70% of those revenues, approximately, we don't know the precise number, 70% come from small and medium-sized businesses. And be careful what you wish for, because a lot of people attack Facebook and Google and Amazon, but they are the engine of small business and medium-sized business, and that's what produces jobs in the economy. So I think you have to be a little bit careful. I know it's not a popular thing to say, to defend the tech giants, but I would go on record as doing that because I think they are a stimulant to the economy, particularly in small and medium-sized enterprises.
Thank you.
And Martin, we've given an entire masterclass. I wish this show was longer. To your point, there is a lot here, and it's obvious why you are the leader in the space just in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, we have a very good team. We have 8 people. We meet every day, actually. It was largely driven by COVID. I think originally in April of last year we started, but we meet pretty much every day, not necessarily every day when we have things going on inside the business. But there are 2 of us in Singapore. There are 3 in Amsterdam, myself in London, 1 in Boulder, Colorado, and 1 in Scottsdale. And so, for example, today we spent just a half an hour on the phone talking about people, clients, and finances. We have 5,500 people in 31 countries. We ask our people. I'll give you a good example of what we do. So I remember about 15 months ago, we were on that call that I mentioned on a particular day, and one of Wes Taha is one of the founders of Media Monks, which is our content practice. said that we were starting to develop a technology, the Epic technology, the Unreal Engine, as it's known. The Fortnite game is based on a piece of technology called the Unreal Engine. And one of the things you can do with the Unreal Engine is basically you can film and create and develop content from anywhere in the world using the Unreal Engine. So we built in the last year or so a studio in New Delhi, and we are creating high resolution digital advertising content from anywhere in the world in that studio. So we can film literally anywhere in the world and produce high quality content. So we're using technology in advanced ways. But you know what you just said is really interesting. Just make the point about COVID. You know, when we started with the pandemic, the leading vaccine companies were probably GSK and Sanofi. And what is really interesting about what happened with vaccine development was who actually developed the vaccines most rapidly. It was the people who didn't have apparently didn't have a vaccine capability, a Pfizer, an AstraZeneca. It was quite remarkable. What does that tell you? It sort of tells you that, you know, the established companies are the ones that probably are not as adaptive or adaptable as they should be. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, going back to Google, Facebook, and Amazon in particular, I think their strengths are that they do, despite the scale of their organizations, they're all over $1 trillion, some over 2 trillion at some stages, which is as big as some nation states. You know, it would be interesting to see how adaptable they are in the long run, because that vaccine lesson is a really interesting one, that the people that you would have bet on before the pandemic or when it started to produce quickly and efficiently a vaccine were not the ones that did it. It was, in the end, Pfizer and AstraZeneca that probably, there were others like Moderna that came up.
Johnson.
We're using the mRNA technology. But it's just interesting that they did it and not the established.
Yeah, no, and I think, like I said, I got to do an entire Office Hours episode with Sir Martin Sorrell.
Absolutely.
You are in encyclopedia, digita, whatever we're going to call it, because I am sitting here bewildered how you have such a grasp on what I simplify as capturing content, modifying it correctly, amplifying it, which is your monetization expertise, and then finally understanding the perpetual nature, utilizing the test and execute approach that you do with an enormous amount of content, and being able to analyze that content to see how you can maximize its exposure through the capture, modify, amplify, and perpetuate strategy. S4 Capital, without a doubt, I'm afraid to even see the next season when we talk to you where you guys are at. An incredible entrepreneur, proven by historical success in intellect and academic, and an entrepreneur, a rare find, Sir Martin Sorrell. Thank you so much for joining us on Office Hours.